Good Wednesday afternoon to you. It's 4 o'clock in time for Sports for CLE. Hope you're having a great afternoon. Thanks for joining us. So the Browns actually have made a couple of roster moves, named some practice squad guys. Let's take a look. They did claim a cornerback, Khalif Halassi, off waivers from the Kansas City Chiefs, and they waived A.J. Green to get to that. Now, Halassi is a rookie, so his 2023 preseason stats, this from Chiefs Kingdom, the Chiefs fan site, 25% completion rate against, third best among cornerbacks, 0.0 passer rating allowed, best in the league, 5 run stops, tied for third best among cornerbacks. Let's welcome in Jack Duffin from the Orange and Brown Report. Jack, obviously, Halassi was on the opposite side of the field, didn't necessarily notice him. What do you make of this, of claiming a cornerback off waivers and then kind of moving on from A.J. Green?
Yeah, so they must have seen something they really liked, because he was a UDFA this year, 100,000 guaranteed, so it wasn't one that they were outbid massively. They could have easily gone and offered that. But it could be one that he was probably looking at it as the Browns roster and going, hey, they've got 6 cornerbacks locked in. There's no point me as a UDFA going there. But the Browns are really keen to add him. They really liked A.J. Green. 900,000 of guarantees shows you that. But it's keen to see what he'll provide. I think it's one that he's easily potentially inactive for the entire season. And that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with him. They've got 11 defensive backs. That is excessive. So it's one where probably sit there, develop, and then next year might be able to step up and do some more.
Yeah, the other thing is, keep in mind it's a different style of defense with Jim Schwartz as the defensive coordinator, so that could figure into it as well. Now, the Browns did get Michael Dunn back, and we'll get into that in a minute. And the expectation is that Maurice Hurst will be back. They still haven't officially put anybody on the injured list yet, the IR. Neither of those guys had to go through waivers just because of their standing and all that. What do you think of getting Dunn back, and he's on the practice squad, and the likelihood of Hurst coming back?
Yeah, so it sounds like Kunicic is going to pass through to injured reserve, and then it's sounding like 4 to 6 weeks. So maybe the bye week we'll see an activation there for him. I'm shocked that Michael Dunn is on a practice squad. For me, he is comfortably deserving of being on a 53-man roster for 18. If that's not the Browns, I don't know what other teams around the league are looking at. He's one that I thought a team would easily offer him a deal and bring him in. I think he's got an awful lot to offer. So all the signs pointed to Alex Wright probably going to IR, but it looks like he's staying on the active roster. He's out there on the bike today at the moment. But it shows he must be getting close to go time, else they could put him on IR, bring him back at the bye week, and then kick that can a little bit down the road. So must be positive signs. And he might be inactive week 1 because there's no need to rush him. There's a talented group. You've got 10 defensive linemen, but it might be week 2 we see him, and that's perfectly fine.
All right, so these are the guys that the Browns have signed to the practice squad. A lot of them familiar names. Cornerback Lorenzo Burns, Jalen Darden, the aforementioned Michael Dunn, Hassan Hall, Tristan Hill, Sam Kamara, McAllister, Mitchell Peden, the tight end, Lonnie Phelps, Charlie Thomas, and the star of the preseason wide receiver, Austin Watkins. In addition, these are guys that they signed to the practice squad from other teams. So Haversick, Lucas Haversick, a kicker, so a younger kicker, not an experienced guy. And the last 2 are really intriguing. Alex Leatherwood, former first-round pick, 17th overall from the Raiders, was cut. And when he said that, I said, that's a guy that I want to see Callahan get a shot at, and they did, in fact, sign him to the practice squad. And then P.J. Walker, folks that have watched this knew I was looking for a guy that had played some officially in his 4th year out of Temple, undrafted free agent by the Colts, played in the XFL. But he did start, I think it was 7 games for the Panthers. in 2020, appeared in 15-7 starts. You see the completion percentage, 5 touchdowns. Spent training camp with the Bears, and the Bears went with a rookie instead of him. Those last two, I really like Leatherwood, and I really like Walker. Those are intriguing guys to get.
Yeah, so they had to let Leatherwood clear waivers, because if he wouldn't have cleared waivers, you pick up whatever contract he's on, which would have been, I think it was about $6 million of guarantees over the next 2 years, and they want no part of that. Whereas they could have signed him to 53, and I honestly thought both of those players would probably land on a 53-man roster. But Leatherwood, they've managed to get him to the practice squad, and it's probably one, if you're looking to rebuild your career as an offensive lineman, Cleveland's top of that list, and that is because of Bill Callahan, because of the talent that's around there. He can come in and really press on. So it's pretty much his last hope in the league. If he blows out here and Callahan wants nothing of him, you might never see him again. So interesting to see what he provides. But if it does work and he pulls it together, this is a guy that could easily has that talent to be in a starting offensive line. He could be our right guard in 2024. That is the ceiling of what you get. And if he works out to be a complete bust, you've lost nothing. You paid him 3 weeks of wages. It's absolute pittance. And PJ Walker, someone asked me yesterday or the day before and said, hey, he's been cut. Do you see him as a candidate? And I was like, no, he's just never going to not be on a 53-man roster. I was like, nah, just you're too optimistic. And to get a player like him is a really, really positive sign, because not just it's on the practice squad, that helps everyone in training. Great scout team quarterback, and nice to see.
Yeah, that's the guy that ended up beating out basically Baker Mayfield in Carolina to get some starts back when the two were competing for the Panthers. All right, some other news. So the Browns did try to sign Cade York to the practice squad, but he opted for a change of scenery. He is now on the Tennessee Titans practice squad. And Jack, I get it from both sides. I understand why the Browns would want him back. Talented guy that you spent a 4th round. And I get why Cade York would be like, you know what, I just need a change of scenery.
Yeah, it's the right move for all parties, I think. And it can easily be one where we're sat here in a year's time and he is back at training camp with the Browns, competing to try and make the 53-man roster. So this doesn't necessarily mean it's the end for Cade York. I think there will be competition for Hopkins in a year's time, because, hey, he's older. You want to keep looking and assessing all your options. So it's not the end, but it's one of let him go somewhere else, let him develop, and that might be what it takes to come back. And it's good to see that when players are leaving, it's done on good terms. It's not one where people are leaving Cleveland and their first interview or the first thing is, I don't want to go there. It is very much a narrative of people want to be in Cleveland, whether it's the coaching staff, whether it's the quarterback, whether it's the other players. People want to be here, and that is a nice change from what we've seen in the past.
When you look at the moves, moving on from a 4th round pick in Cade York, getting the veteran quarterback who at least has had 7 starts and has seen some things in the NFL at regular season speed, even more so than Joshua Dobbs. Is this hey, we're set up to win now? That's kind of what all the moves have said to me, minus the Josh Dobbs move, and now Walker answers that.
Yeah, no, everything is win now. The cards are on the table, and it's not Super Bowl or bust, because at the end of the day, it's get to the playoffs, and then if you're up against Mahomes, Burrow, Josh Allen, Herbert, you've got Trevor Lawrence, you've got Aaron Rodgers, it's madness, in all honesty. I was chatting to someone today and I said, if you got to the playoffs, the easiest quarterback you might play would be in the Super Bowl, because you've run through the AFC and you only have to play the NFC at that point. And that's how crazy it is. So it's not one where it's Super Bowl or bust. It's get to the playoffs and just see, because if you're up against Patrick Mahomes, you're going to need some luck. But let's get to the quarterbacks, play some January football, and then if it is your season, amazing. If it's not, then hey, we're playing January football and do that year in, year out for another 9 years with Deshaun Watson. One of them years, you might get lucky.
Jack Duffin from the Orange and Brown Report and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll take a look at where the Browns stand cap-wise, some extensions that might happen, and now that we know the basic 60, 75 players with 53, as well as the practice squad, who might be the 48 active. Sports4CLE Talking Browns. We'll be right back with Jack Duffin. Stay with us.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Jack Duffin from the Orange and Brown Report. So Jack tweets this out. Browns cap space, current cap space, 2023, 38 million, 38.8 million plus. 2024, 31.3 over, no rollover yet. And again, those are based on some of the over the cap numbers. So, Jack, when you look at that, safe to assume those restructurings that happened last week, the week before, just to make sure that you have the ability to get where you need to get next year and in the coming years?
Yeah, it's all about the future. We've got, obviously, it's a little bit crazy and all moving around at the minute because guys on and off the roster, moved to 53. We've got the practice squad guys to sign. So probably once everything shakes out over the next week, we're probably going to be around 33 million of cap space. And that's a nice spot to be in. They'll plan to roll a majority of that into next season. And then that puts them in a positive number for week one and sort of that next off season, which is where they want to be so they can plan what they want to do. And it's about sustaining this year on year. So I would always encourage as well people to use over the cap. You've got Spotrac, they're out at the moment on the 2024 number by about 50 million. So I'm sure they'll bring that in line, but I always recommend over the cap as the best source of salary cap data out there.
Now, the other thing that you tweet out, and a lot of people probably don't realize this, practice squad salaries count on the salary cap. So take us through that and what that means, basically.
Yeah, so when a player is signed to the practice squad, they're guaranteed what they're paid for that week, and it just rolls through the season. For guys that have got 0 or 1 year, they get 12 grand a week, and then based on if they have 2 or more years, they can earn somewhere in that 16 to 20,000. So depending on how much they want to bid and really bring someone in. If a player is then elevated for game day, they don't actually have to be active, but they're elevated off of the practice squad into the roster. You can do 2 a week, and it might be to cover injury, to call someone up for a bit of special teams. They'll then get paid a minimum salary, and all of that counts towards the salary cap. So you're looking around 4 million over the season is what it's going to cost, but there is benefit to that. That's 16 extra guys you can practice with and everything else. One point, I've got no idea why they've got a spare kicker, if I'm honest, on the practice squad. That feels like a waste to me. I think you can find better uses.
All right. The other thing that kind of came to mind is, could they be thinking about extending guys? And 2 that came to mind. One, you mentioned Nick Chubb. The other one would be Zadarius Smith. If you start to see what you like, and he and Myles Garrett are just kind of nightmares, do you try to get him, locked in? Take us through Nick Chubb and any type of extension, when that could occur.
Yeah, so throw a date in the diary. Let's say Tuesday, next week. And the reason why I'm going to pull that out, 2020, first year of Andrew Berry, he extended Kareem Hunt on the Tuesday before the first game of the season. So that's why I say keep an eye there. The running back market is absolutely on its knees. And so if you want the time to go to Nick Chubb and go, hey, let's do another deal, and the thought that that deal would be somewhere in the region of 12 to 13 million is nuts. Usually you sign a deal and then you come back to the table a couple of years later, you would expect that market to be about 15 million. The NFL salary cap is rising, but the one position which continues to go down in price is actually running back. So I could see them coming to the table and going, hey, we'll guarantee you the 2023 season, the 2024 season, and then team options that favor the Browns for 2025, 2026 if they need to move on. Because at the end of the day, he's a running back, he's getting older. There can always be injuries, things happen. That could be a nice compromise where they can get around the table and agree that. In terms of Zadarius Smith, I think he wants to test free agency next year. So it's one where I expect him to go to market next year, decide what he wants to do. And I can still see him coming back, but I think he'll just want to see what else he can get, what else is out there, because who knows, some team could make a big offer. You've seen Von Miller, you've seen Chandler Jones. Some of these guys have got monster contracts on the wrong side of 30.
Yeah, he's over 30, so again, I get it. If he really likes it and he likes what he's seeing with this, you may try to do that during the year and lock him up. Let's talk about the game day active. So there's a 53-man roster, the practice squad 12 to 15, how many ever they have there. 48 are active for game days. Who do you think could be some of the guys that are the inactives that they're kind of keeping around to try to? Those are guys you try to develop.
Yeah, so I've sort of cut it down to 6 spots where people aren't going to be playing, and that's based on everyone being healthy, not calling up any guys to the practice squad because, hey, if someone's injured, they're obviously going to be the inactive. So start off with wide receiver. I can see Bell or Tillman being inactive. They had 5 on average last season, so there might be odd times where they make one of them inactive because you have your 3 starting wide receivers. Number 4 will get a little bit of play, but 5 and 6 barely play. They're out there as injury cover, so one of them as inactive is just realistic. I think you're probably going to see Hudson or Jones potentially as someone that is going to be a game day inactive. They could just look at that and go, hey, we don't need James Hudson. Jones is going to play if someone goes down. Then someone on the D-line, probably one of the 2 rookies, so either Ika or Maguire, and that's no indication that they're bad, they're the wrong pick. There is just so much talent. If you've got 10 guys there, they only had 8 active on game day last year, so 9's a nice increase, 10 just is a spot you're not going to use. So Ika or Maguire probably going to be inactive. One of the cornerbacks, so most obvious name is our new cornerback that was just signed. Give him 4, 5, 6 weeks to get up to speed before you force him. And probably Ronnie Hickman. So that'd be my 5 as a group. So a wide receiver, a tackle, defensive lineman, a cornerback, and a safety. So expect that to be your sort of group. And you'll see odd weeks where they might do something different due to injury. But that puts you in a nice spot. This roster is loaded. I remember years ago, we'd be sat here on cut down day going, is there a starter out there? And Browns fans are arguing over like a 6th or 7th wide receiver, a 3rd tight end. It's a nice spot to be in.
Yeah, and you know the big thing was Watkins, and I'm sure you heard it. We got a lot of pushback when we said we didn't think he was going to make the 53-man roster. If you're going to be one of the 4th safety or the 7th or 6th wide receiver, you have to be able to play on special teams so you can bring something to that active 48 on game day.
Yeah, it's exactly about that. And the same with the entire practice squad. Anyone that is sat there on the fringes of the 53 or on the practice squad, the only realistic game time they're going to have is on special teams. They're going to be active, right, you're going out there to play specials. And even like Tillman and Bell, they're only realistically going to play on special teams unless someone gets injured, because you're not benching Marquise Goodwin, Amari Cooper, Elijah Moore, or DPJ. You're not benching any of them to put Cedric Tillman out there. So if they want to get snaps, it's going to come through an injury or it's going to come through special teams. And that's not saying they're bad players. This roster is just so loaded with talent, it's hard to get playing time. And that's the way you want it. The old days of like, hey, this is a 6th round pick. Yeah, he can start. That is long gone for the Cleveland Browns.
The other thing that when you look at the composition of the roster, I'm curious because you've compared this, and we'll get into that in a little bit. 2 rookie undrafted free agents make this year's squad, Diabate and Hickman. The previous years under Andrew Berry, it was just one, DeAnthony Bell. He's on the squad as well. Is that kind of an indication that they've kind of built this roster and it has kind of developed to where they're not developing guys as much as trying to win now?
It's bizarre in a way, because you'd think logically the better the roster gets, the less chance of a UDFA making the team. It's just, hey, the roster's not loaded in 2020. There should be chances for UDFAs. The roster's loaded in 2023. UDFAs shouldn't have a chance. We've basically seen the opposite. So I don't know whether they just feel more confident in particular UDFAs and they've pushed for them, or they've just been really impressed with how much talent these guys have come on with, and they've just shone. So I think it's bizarre, in all honesty. DeAnthony Bell is there because there was an interesting interview, Joe Hayden, in-house Browns interview with Bubba Ventrone, and gushing is probably one way to put it. The words he had for him was as if he was his son, and he was incredibly proud of him. Bubba Ventrone loves DeAnthony Bell, so it was no surprise to see him on the roster, and he will be a core part of this special team.
Jack Duffin from the Orange and Brown Report and I are going to take one more time out. Other side of the break, we'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Jack will also, he's written an article comparing the Browns rosters the last couple years to this year. We'll dive into that. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Jack Duffin from the Orange and Brown Report. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Yeah, hi guys. This is Ron from Cleveland. I was just channel surfing a little while ago and came across the NFL channel, and they were given their yearly ideas on what team was going to finish where in what division. They came up to the Cleveland Browns and had the goal to say that we had the worst owner because he spent too much money, and God knows that's terrible, and we had the worst coach and actually the worst quarterback in the AFC North. Our quarterback apparently isn't as good as Kenny Pickett. And to beat all, they had us finishing 8-8. Apparently we're so terrible that we won't be able to finish the season. So I'd like to hear what you guys think about the beating that the Browns keep taking in the media. Is it planned? Aren't they allowed to say anything good about it because we have a quarterback that had a problem a couple years ago? I don't know, but I'd just like to hear what you guys have to say. As always, go Browns. Woof.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Jack, the beautiful part of it is they get to prove it out on the field. But I think the last couple of years, the team has underperformed relative to what I expected them to do, probably relative to what you expected them to do. So it's kind of I want to see it on the field type of attitude. I do think they're very much nationally underestimating what Deshaun Watson will do this year.
Yeah, it's all on what Deshaun Watson does at the end of the day. If you took away the quarterbacks and we were just comparing the roster minus a quarterback and we said, hey, what team do we want to put Patrick Mahomes on and they can then run away with it? You are going to be in the top 1, 2, 3 in that conversation easily. It's us, the Eagles. I don't even know who else even comes up to that level of talent. So the roster's stacked. It is just a question of can Deshaun Watson step up and deliver? Because if he can deliver, this is going to be an incredibly fun few years. In terms of the ownership, lots of people credit Andrew Berry for what is happening with the salary cap. How do the Cleveland Browns outspend the entire NFL? It isn't Andrew Berry that credit belongs to. It is Jimmy Haslam. And look, there's stuff in the past. Paul DePodesta, Sashi Brown wanted Sean McDermott. He gave him Hugh Jackson. There's been learning curve, and we're now at a point where he is digging into his pockets, outspending every owner in the entire NFL. The NFLPA absolutely love him. The other owners who aren't able to keep up with his cash richness and how much he's investing, they don't like him. And that's not our problem. Just go out there and let's see the results match the investment and the talent in this team. And it's on Deshaun Watson. We will find out. He only needs to be top 8, though. We're not demanding he has to be top 3 and compete with Mahomes, Burrow, and Josh Allen. Top 8, and this roster is going to be pancaking teams and in it until we're talking championship game, divisional round. That little bit of luck to come up against Patrick Mahomes and win a game, we could be talking about February football.
Yeah, and I was kind of chuckling when you mentioned, Jimmy Haslam and spending. Cleveland fans forever have wanted an owner that is willing to go out and spend, and they have one, and they don't, because there's a salary cap, they don't even understand. They have the owner they've wanted forever that wants to win and isn't afraid to put money out to do it.
Oh, it's insane. You'd think there would be parity in the NFL because of the way the salary cap's designed, but what the Browns are doing is they're spending everyone else's budget that they would have in 2 years' time. The Browns are going, we're going to spend that now, and then next year we'll spend the budget we have in 2 years. Everyone else has in 2 years' time then. And they are just so far ahead of the curve. And people are like, oh, I'm sure the Eagles and the Saints are doing the same thing. They're not. No one else is close to what the Browns are doing. The Eagles are still behind that. But you have Jimmy Haslam is redefining what an owner needs to step up and do if you want to compete at the top level of the NFL. You can draft Patrick Mahomes, or you can throw in a load of money. And everyone else could easily be left behind those two.
All right, I know you've written an article for the Orange and Brown Report. How does the Browns' 2023 roster compare to the 2020, 2021, and 2022 rosters? Again, you can check this out at the Orange and Brown Report. I'd also encourage you to follow Jack on Twitter. Those of you who watch the show know we use his stuff quite a bit. So take us through that article where you're comparing rosters.
Yeah, so just sort of looking at position rooms, what's up, what's down, and what's sort of unusual. The two downs that we'd normally see is running back and O-line. I'd have expected if Alex Wright would go to IR and bring back Michael Dunn onto the roster, the O-line would be where we'd expect it to be. So that's one that is unusual for what we'd see. We'd usually see one more on the O-line, one less on the D-line. And so that's something to keep in mind, that a change from what we've seen in the past. And then the other change is we're one down at running back. There's always been 4 running backs in the team, and that's not including Felton. I've always counted him as wide receiver because that's where he's always played before this preseason. And we're 1 DB up. We've got 11 DBs on the roster, which is quite unusual to be that high. So that's just 2 position rooms to keep in mind that they might still be out there looking for people. In terms of running backs, it could be Leonard Fournette that they go out, because you've got 8 career carries for Ford. You've got 10 career carries for Strong. That's it behind Nick Chubb. So that could be something where they go, actually, let's drop one of the DBs and we'll sign Leonard Fournette. And then at O-line, Dennis Kelly was let go by the Eagles. He's a veteran swing tackle. They could look to bring him in and then maybe cut down on one of the defensive linemen. So just 2 positions to keep in mind that they're up in and they're down in. Nothing wrong with that. It's all about finding the best players, and then you'll balance that out with the inactive list.
The other thing that you did, and again, I encourage people to follow you on Twitter. Here is a tweet that you put out, and it's really interesting. It's the average age of the Browns. So offense, 26.2 years old. Defense, 26.1. Special teams is interesting because they went out and got some veterans, and that 31 is the average age for that. Players over 30, Hewlett, who's your long snapper, McLeod, who's the safety they brought in. The kicker is 32. Goodwin, wide receiver, is 32. Harris is 32. Batonio, almost 32. Akins, the tight end, over 31, and Smith, Zadarius Smith, that is almost 31. When you look at it, it's a young core.
Yeah, and we look at a lot of those older players, then 2 of them are specialists. You've got guys in there like Rodney McLeod that is probably your second, maybe third safety, depending how Grant Delpit's doing. But there's not many core guys in there. We're not talking about the Myles Garretts, the David Njoku's, the wide receivers, the quarterback. So this is a team that they can keep together, the key parts of it, for another 4 years easily. So that's really, really encouraging because Andrew Berry can keep building this, and they do need to think about the future, but they've got 4 years to do it. It's a nice position to be in. It's not one where we're going, hey, they've got 2 years and you've got to rip out all of these guys because they're over 30. They just need to keep drafting, keep bringing more people in behind. And yeah, there's a few pieces. We're talking Zadarius Smith, Shelby Harris, Joel Bitonio. If that's it from your starters that you're really worried about because they're over 30, that's a pretty good spot to be in. And outside of Joel Bitonio, I think you can pretty much easily find replacements for the other 2 at a relatively nice price on the open market.
Jack Duffin from the Orange and Brown Report, as always. Thanks so much for the time and the insight. Appreciate it very much, Jack.
Thanks a lot.
Jack Duffin, as always, great stuff. Make sure you read him, Orange and Brown Report. Follow him on Twitter. He always has really good stuff. Is one of the best at the salary cap, without question. We're going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Jeff Lloyd on the other side of the break. We'll hear who thinks the Browns could be a Super Bowl dark horse. Sports4CLE. I'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to Go Forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Kyle Brandt from NFL Network, Good Morning Football, on which team he thinks is a dark horse team with a realistic chance to win the Super Bowl.
Let's go to the American Football Conference. Okay. All right, these guys. Here's the fact, all right? The last time it was a real situation with real football for the Browns quarterback, he's a top 5 guy. Not top 10, not top 12, top 5. Superstar. Fantastic. The Browns might have one of the top quarterbacks. They may have the league's best running back. They may have the league's best pass rusher. They have a coach of the year. They have won in the playoffs at least a few years ago. And that AFC, and specifically the AFC North, is going to cannibalize itself one way or another if the Browns can tread water, win, and the Deshaun thing takes off and he resembles who he looked like 3 years ago. He's not an old man, not coming off an injury. He's fresh, rested, studied, ready, he could be fantastic. The Browns being the AFC team would be an unbelievable thing. And the Bills, Bengals, Ravens, Steelers kind of pick each other off. And the Browns are like, we figured this thing out under Stefanski. Myles Garrett's the Defensive Player of the Year. Zadarius Smith is in the conversation, and we are going to rough people up. I think this is the Browns.
With that, let's welcome in Jeff Lloyd from the Locked On Browns podcast. Jeff, nothing that Kyle Brandt said is like wildly outlandish.
Well, no. I mean, a lot of us have said these things for weeks and months now. But I think everybody kind of got to see the way the Browns defense looked. And, granted on Saturday against the Chiefs second-teamers, but you saw a glimpse of what this could be, even though Myles Garrett wasn't out there. Darius Smith was active. JOK looks like the player he was at Notre Dame when the Browns drafted him. Basically, keep him clean and just let an elite athlete go find plays and make them. The depth is there. They are very deep at defensive end. They are very deep now at defensive tackle. I mean, they're so deep at defensive tackle that guys they've had for the last couple of years don't deserve to be on this roster. That's how much transformation they have done. And then offensively, yeah, I mean, you like everything. You do. But if it turns out that we all love what Deshaun Watson is doing, then yeah, this is, the expectations are through the roof for this team. Yes, the AFC North is going to be a difficult division, and I agree that they're probably going to cannibalize themselves a little bit. I also think injuries will probably be key as far as, who gets the good luck of it, who gets the bad luck of it. But, you have the Bengals. Joe Burrow's back at practice now. I always expected the Browns were going to see him week 1. Browns have this advantage in the AFC North that they always seem to match up well with the Bengals. They just got to find a way maybe not to have those hiccups against the Ravens and the Steelers. But, yeah, and the opportunity for them to win the AFC North is there. And, to get to a Super Bowl, usually having, some home field advantage in the playoffs is pretty crucial to you.
So we know the 53-man roster, at least the initial one. Any surprises? How good do you think the roster is?
I think the biggest surprise for me was the overall emphasis on special teams. Whether it was a player like D'Anthony Bell. Matt Adams really didn't do much at all this summer, but does have a history, playing special teams for Bubba Ventrone. So those guys, and even Mike Ford was another guy that was brought in, But look, you're trying to hedge your bets and you're trying to please everybody. And you're basically trying to double down. With Deshaun Watson, what do? They put more emphasis into the wide receiver room. They put more emphasis in the offensive line by bringing back Ethan Posick. You can't bring in Jim Schwartz and just expect that him alone is going to wave a magic wand, and all of a sudden players who weren't so good are going to be good. You're going to do the same thing for Bubba Ventrone. You can try to give him that. But I was surprised that 3 guys that are predominantly special teamers were kept. I did find that a bit surprising because, normally when you get in a space where it was D'Anthony Bell, Ronnie Hickman, granted they both made the roster, there's a 5-year age difference between D'Anthony Bell and Ronnie Hickman. You figured, all right, well, kids, you're undrafted free agents. You made the team. And guess what undrafted free agents who make teams do? You now basically become core special teamers. But I also think it's it's how important this first 5 games out of 6 is for the Browns. And they truly know it. I mean, this is, it could either go really, really bad or it could go really, really well. If it goes really, really well, they have a chance to run away from the rest of the AFC North, basically, and get a nice lead on them while they all beat each other up. And the Browns only have 1 division game past week 10, and that's the finale in Cincinnati.
All right. They moved on from Cade York with Dustin Hopkins. What does that move say to you about the front office's belief in this roster?
Browns lost 4 games last year by 3 points or less. That's a really, really difficult thing. You switch those numbers around, and you see the difference that last year, all of a sudden, a year that looked so-so, all of a sudden actually looked pretty promising considering all the circumstances that were brought in. Week 1, Cincinnati. Week 2, Pittsburgh. Week 3, Tennessee. Week 4, Baltimore. Bye week, San Francisco 49ers. All of these games are going to be close. All of these games are going to be tight. These are good NFL teams. The Titans maybe we're not all really that sure on yet, but they do have a good defense. But the rest of these ball clubs should be pretty sound this season. The Browns could not have that opportunity happen again. They couldn't lose at home to the Bengals 26-24 because maybe Cade York went 1 of 3 on his field goals. They felt the importance. And look, Dustin Hopkins does not have the leg strength, nowhere near close to what Cade York does. But you talk about the makeable kicks, and that was the problem that Cade York had, was the makeable kicks. Dustin Hopkins is, basically that guy that gets there, 140 yards from the tee, pulls out his 7-iron, and he's then punting from, 10 feet and in. He's that type of guy. but the Browns feel they had to make an impact. And it was really, if you noticed, they were the first ones to do it. Obviously, Monday, they made the trade for Dustin Hopkins. Then yesterday, we saw a lot of teams scrambling, trying to acquire kickers yesterday. The Browns kind of got ahead of that. I'm not sure if their mind was convinced that we're going to take whatever Charger kicker doesn't make the team, but they knew it. And honestly, they were going into it. And from what I know, it was the Philadelphia game, and it was the pushed it to the right, got the second opportunity to win the game, then pushed it to the left, and it was just they felt that maybe at that point mentally it was just going to be too much for him to basically try to come back from, to be ready for important games out of the stretch here in 23.
Well, the other thing is Marquise Goodwin, wide receiver, back on the practice field, working out for the Browns, trying to get ready for the opener. He talked about getting ready for that opener, as well as Kevin Stefanski kind of saying to everybody that he has been locked in and has been working really hard. Here's Marquise Goodwin.
Being locked in is a part of my DNA, honestly, and thank you, Coach, for those kind words. It's just part of my job. I'm a professional player. I'm a professional. And as a professional, you guys are all locked in. Y'all out here, y'all looking and getting questions, know what you had to do coming out here. I approach my job the same way.
Marquise, did you ever doubt that you'd be able to come back?
Nah, there was no doubt in my mind. I knew I would come back. That's why I stayed here every day with a smile on my face, positive attitude, because I knew I was coming back.
You got 2 weeks until the opener. Do you expect to be out there?
I expect to be out there. I mean, it's really up to the staff and the trainers to make sure that I'm ready to be in a position to help the team. I can say that I'm ready and do all of these things, but until they give me the go-ahead, then it's really up to them.
Are there any medical hurdles you need to still clear?
I think that's a question that'll be answered over time. I don't know. It's just day to day right now, and we're just dealing with today. This is my first day of practice. I barely made it through practice.
And Jeff, that's a guy they're not going to use on 40 or 50 snaps, but the snaps they use him on are going to be meaningful.
Well, when a guy comes onto the field and he runs a 4-2, everybody on the defensive side of the ball has to take notice. And, granted, he will never be the top threat on the field. Your eyes would be on Amari Cooper. They would be on David Njoku, Elijah Moore, Donovan Peoples-Jones, or even Nick Chubb, obviously. But when he comes on the field, you can't get yourself in a situation where you got a safety covering a guy like Marquise Goodwin. You can't. He is track fast, legit track fast. And this is one of the reasons the Browns wanted to get a guy like in here. If Anthony wasn't going to make it, which I think the Browns felt probably wasn't going to be the case, they needed to have somebody that could absolutely stretch the field, which would either A, create running lanes for Deshaun Watson, or B, have the coverage falling back on the deep man and, just start working your crossers, working your deep side, square ends, those types of things. It should make everybody's life easier, because he's going to come on the field and he's essentially going to be the guy right away that whoever's calling the shots in the secondary is going to say, well, we got to line up here and we got to line up this way because you can't cover him, I can't cover him, but those two can. So it's a difference maker. And, for Marquise, he's always had this type of personality. Anywhere he's been in the NFL, he's always been loved in the locker room. And he has been through a lot in his life. The blood clots that he just went through was kind of minor to some of the things that he and his wife have been through in their life. So you want to talk about a guy who's got perspective and understand what it's all about. And you'll understand, tough time, what the old saying is, tough times don't last, tough people do. And if you want to talk about somebody that's the epitome of that, is a guy like Marquise Goodwin.
Jeff Lloyd from the Lockdown Browns podcast, and I'm going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Plus, we'll talk a little bit about stock up, stock down for a couple of players. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
We continue talking Browns with Jeff Lloyd from the Lockdown Browns podcast. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, this is Glenn from Berea. And under the Stefanski regime, we've seen a lot of mediocre quarterbacks have their best season. This was before Watson. And do you think Alex Van Pelt gets enough credit for it? You've talked to quarterbacks like Aaron Rodgers and others who have had him coach them. They rave about what a good coach he is. And as another comment, every time I hear someone talk about Stefanski being fired, I cringe, because Stefanski's fired, we most likely lose Alex Van Pelt, Stump Mitchell, Bill Callahan, Jim Schwartz, and I think he's got an all-star cast of assistants. So I really hope Stefanski's around for a long time with these coaches. Thanks. Bye.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. You know, that's kind of the life of an NFL coach, Jeff. You win, or they're going to find someone they think can win.
And it's still the strangest of things, though, you know, because you keep in mind this all started, and then, you know, they were heading, you know, towards the summer, and it was all COVID. And, you know, the fact that they did what they did in 2020 with a very abbreviated training camp, no OTAs, no preseason games as a brand new regime, it was really, really impressive. You know, things obviously that were out of their control the last two seasons, you know, Baker's injury in the home opener in 21, when the, you know, readjusted verdict on Deshaun Watson, you know, went from, you know, 5 games to 11 games. Obviously that changed the complete outlook of 2022. Nobody thought at the way 21 ended, the way that defense played, that all of a sudden they were going to come out and basically be a bunch of slugs in 2022. But it did. They know what they're doing. And they, you know, the thing that impresses me most is, you know, there's been a lot of, you know, the old quote unquote LOL moments over the last few years, you know, last prior regimes. There really hasn't been that case here. You know, Andrew Berry, you know, Kevin Stefanski, they run a legit professional organization. And, you know, it's weird that Brown fans, where all of a sudden now maybe 7 wins isn't enough, because God knows, you know, 7 wins would have covered 4 seasons back in the day. But this is going to be what they are ultimately graded on. Everything is there. There are no questions. I mean, we got people on social media arguing over who's going to be the 6th or 7th wide receiver, who's going to be, you know, the 6th or 7th linebacker. These are not conversations. These final cutdowns, this used to be a day, you know, where basically the Browns treated it like, you know, it was a wholesale club, like it was BJ's. They would go in and five, 6, 7 guys. They claimed one guy, and none of their guys were claimed. I mean, it's a whole different world for this team, and the way they're being run right now. But again, wins and losses define everything.
Yeah, and the other thing is, it's been a nice, quiet off season compared to the last couple. So
the only thing that was a problem, they sent packing. So
yeah, so hopefully it translates to the beginning of the year. So this is from Pro Football Focus, 2023 preseason. Stock up, stock down after this 2023 preseason. Stock up, DeJuan Jones. Played close to 4 full games worth of plays, did not allow a sack for the Browns, across 148 snaps of pass protection. Rookie 4th rounder, led up just 3 pressures, looked like he was capable of playing at this level at right tackle for the Browns. And again, a 4th round pick. I guess the thing you could say is, boy, you'd like to see more of them.
Yeah, and that's where we're in this weird situation, because for DeJuan Jones, unless it's maybe, 3rd and short, 4th and short, or extra point or field goal, we're probably not going to see DeJuan Jones anytime soon. Perhaps 2024. But you want to see, that the light can go on. You want to see that, you're getting some return of your investment into the young man. And there were questions. Obviously, nobody was really thrilled that he went down to the Senior Bowl, did 1 practice, and basically said, "I'm out of here." Some of the older regimes, I'm sure, is talking about his love and his affection for the game of basketball. Won him no favors there. But this guy, what you saw, and the thing is, it's one thing to just be this big old guy out there, and there's certainly been guys that the NFL has tried this over for years. But you got to be able to move, and his footwork is pretty close to damn pristine for a guy his size. And you can't really teach that. They have it or they don't. The other stuff, the technique, the punch, keeping a guy at a certain amount of distance so they don't get into your chest, that's the stuff that can be worked upon. And I think DeJuan Jones, to his credit, came in here understanding, he needed some refinement, got with a coach like Bill Callahan, put in the effort, And, you had a guy who just put together a phenomenal summer. I mean, and Brian Baldinger made him a focus of every single Browns game this preseason. So here's a guy in Brian Baldinger who, does this for a living. But, after the Hall of Fame game said, all right, well, DeJuan Jones is going to be a focus of mine and my work for the entire summer. And the rookie certainly did not disappoint.
Well, the other thing is the Browns went out and got another big guy in, Alex Leatherwood. I saw him and I'm like, boy, I hope they are able to bring him in on the practice squad. And they were. Leatherwood is a guy that was the 17th overall pick, probably a reach by the Las Vegas Raiders. But Bill Callahan's got to be going, sure, bring him in. We can work with him.
Every now and then when you were like a kid or something went wrong and, well, Dad would, call Bill, send it down there. This is, hey, and this is kind of what you did with DeJuan Jones. But, and the thing is he had a relative athletic score of almost 9.70 with 10 being the best. So Alex Leatherwood's got some athleticism to work with. Ironically enough, he's probably coming here to learn some tackle position. He played left at Alabama while Jedrick Wills played right. The Bears, when they released him, everybody, oh, yeah, would you have interest? Well, yeah, as long as he goes through waivers because, the Bears had to pay him $4 million. For Leatherwood, he gets his $4 million. He gets an opportunity now to also collect a practice squad salary. He gets to go work with, obviously, Bill Callahan. And if there is a player with inside that body, basically 9 times out of 10, Bill Callahan is going to get that guy to become a player. It was a really, really smart acquisition. The Browns have done this, and they've been pretty good with this even before Andrew Berry, but identifying talent that didn't necessarily make it. Malik McDowell, obviously, a couple of years ago. Take advantage on talent. Just because it didn't work out somewhere else, and there could have been a variety of reasons, including the player, why things didn't work out. But, I mean, what harm do you have in putting Alex Leatherwood on your practice squad for a couple of weeks? And the other thing is, Myles Garrett and all these pass rushers, there is some athleticism to him. He was a number 1, first-round pick. These are guys you want to practice against as opposed to maybe the guy who came out of, double-A, college football at, and as a tackle at 290. Go beat up on a grown man. It's the best way to get your work in.
All right, before we go to break, we mentioned earlier Joe Burrow back at practice. Here is the proof of that. So Burrow back in pads and a helmet, working through practice with the Bengals. Likely means he will be there week 1 when the Browns face them a week from Sunday here in Cleveland. So, again, you didn't think you were going to get away from it, but again, the Browns have had success against Joe Burrow.
I don't want to say they have his number because he's certainly, been a factor and had some, good numbers in those games. They just seem to match up well. The Bengals offensive line, whenever they play the Browns, doesn't seem to have their best days. The Browns defensive line certainly does have their best days when they see the Bengals. Nick Chubb has always been an issue in those games. Did you say, I want the Browns to win, but I don't want Joe Burrow to play? Look, it would make sense. I would get it. But, he's a MVP caliber type player on obviously one of the biggest rivals of the franchises. And he was going to be there the whole time. He was a calf. I mean, it's not like he blew out his ACL and we were wondering whether or not he was going to be in 6 weeks. It was a calf strain, and he'll be back just like Jerome Ford, came back from, his hamstring injury. Be the best. You got to beat the best. And Browns have the opportunity week 1.
Jeff Lloyd from the Locked On Browns podcast and I are going to take one more time out. On the other side of the break, we'll hear from the newest Browns running back, Pierre Strong. Sports4CLE, I'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Jeff Lloyd from the Locked On Browns podcast. Yesterday, Pierre Strong, the running back that the Browns traded Tyrone Wheatley for, met with the media, talked about the opportunity with the Browns, playing with Nick Chubb, and this offensive line.
It's great. He can know everything. He wouldn't be top 5 if he wouldn't every year. So, I listen to everything he say and to take it all in. He helped me perfect my game and just telling me little key pointers that he used and he do, so he helped my game out as well.
This is an offensive line that is really good. The scheme is really good. This is a little bit like San Francisco's.
Yeah.
Is there a little bit of excitement to kind of get behind this line and run behind it?
Yeah. I'm ready, man. Like you said, it's one of the best lines, if not in the league. So, just every day come to work, run behind them. Can't do nothing but look good. So.
Is Kevin already dialing up some trick plays for you? I saw you threw some touchdown passes in college.
No, I don't know about all that. I'm just getting my feet wet out here, today and just, catching over the rhythm of things and how things belong and how things are operated here in Cleveland. So.
Could you be a returner if they wanted you to do that?
Yeah, I'll be anything, man. I'm a football player at the end of the day, so anything they need me to do, I'm gonna do it.
And Jeff, he has returned kickoffs before, hasn't returned punts. 4.37, I think, was his 40 time at the combine. That's a speed. We call that a speed back in the old days.
And to look at him, he doesn't look like a guy who runs a 4.37. He's obviously, pretty well put together. But the Browns, look, they gave Demetric Felton, they gave John Kelly, they gave Hassan Hall. Look, and even Jordan Wilkins, they gave these guys every opportunity. And obviously the Browns were not blown away because between Pierre Strong Jr. and Jerome Ford, they have 17 total carries in the NFL. So the Browns basically said, we've seen what you other guys have, but we're still more confident in these other guys. Strong was caught up in a weird numbers game in New England after the move for Ezekiel Elliott. Tyrone Wheatley, the Browns resigned themselves to the fact that he had done so well for himself that once they released him, there was going to be no opportunity to get him back on the practice squad. So you moved a player for a player. He had the top 40 time, as you mentioned, at the combine of the year. He was there with 4.37. And yeah, you get to pick the brain of Nick Chubb. You get to run behind a Bill Callahan offensive line. You maybe get to return a kick or two. This is a really good spot, for Pierre Strong Jr. to come into. And, with New England, it's always a little bit difficult. Obviously, the standard is there. Bill Callahan does not have as long a leash with, some players as some other coaches do. Comes here, brand new golden opportunity. There could be an opportunity where he is running back 2 week 1. We know Jerome Ford's back, but we don't know how much back essentially Jerome Ford is. But this was a nice get. And, the Browns, they love athleticism. If they get an opportunity, they're going to go chase it.
When you look at that, and you mentioned it, between Jerome Ford and Pierre Strong, there's not a lot of carries. Do you think they're just looking at it saying, if we can get, and I'm just throwing a name out there because Jack Duffin earlier had mentioned, if we can get a Leonard Fournette or we can get somebody fill in the blank who's had significant carries at a reasonable price, are they looking at that, or do you think they're not doing that this year?
It could be something that could change, but I think the overall premise is you got to realize there's just not going to be as many carries to be had anymore. This is not a team that's going to run the ball like they did the last couple of years where you would have Nick get 20, you would have Kareem get maybe 10 plus. This is a team that's going to throw the football more often. Are they going to run the ball if they have the lead to close games out? Probably sure, most likely. But this team, it's going to be a big discrepancy as far as, whether there were passing attempts or whether there were running attempts. That number is going to get lower. So the number, replacing the 10 to 15 that were there maybe the last couple of years for other running backs besides Nick Chubb, it's not just going to be there. Leonard Fournette is an interesting name, but, I don't think Leonard Fournette has any thought process in his mind of going anywhere to back up. He's made a ton of money in this game. And, if he's going somewhere, it's with every intention to be the number one back. But I like the opportunity to let these younger guys prove themselves. And I also like the premise alone that these guys are just younger, less wear and tear. So when Nick does come out, you're putting in some guys, who are young, have plenty of athleticism, have plenty of juice. It may be intriguing. And the Browns certainly had the opportunity to do this. They've been in the running back market for, probably 5 weeks now. But you got to think if they didn't do it to this point, that maybe it's not something they're ready to jump into.
The other thing to keep in mind, Ford was a wide receiver in high school, so he can catch the ball coming out. And Strong is a guy that also can catch the ball. And with 4.37 speed, you get him in some open space. I'm sure Kevin Stefanski will find a way to make that work.
And neither of these guys are going to be, the takeaway options when they're on the field. If you're running, obviously, if you're running 11 personnel, you're running 12 personnel. Both tight ends are very athletic. The back's always going to be the last guy that's thought of. So, I mean, there's going to be a lot of easy swings to the flat because the coverage drops. And, now you got, 4-3-7 in the open field, and he does have decent size. Jerome Ford does have decent size. And, got him one-on-one with a quarterback. As far as, running backs, you'll take that matchup all day long.
Jeff Lloyd, Locked On Browns podcast, as always. Great stuff. Thanks so much for the time and the insight. Appreciate it, Jeff.
All the best, Dave. Week 1's coming, kids.
I can't wait. Jeff Lloyd, Locked On Browns podcast. Check him out. Really good stuff, as always. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We will see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.